All right, let's take a journey into a hidden world, a microscopic universe that's all around us. And yeah, even inside us. We're going to take a grand tour of the incredibly complex world of bacteria, from the way they're shaped all the way to their amazing survival strategies. So here's our game plan for this tour. First, we'll look at their basic shapes. Then, we'll check out their first line of defense, the cell wall. After that, we'll peek inside at all the machinery, see how they move around, and finally, we'll track the rise and fall of a whole bacterial population. First up, a universe of shapes. You know how you can identify a car just by its silhouette? Well, it's kind of the same for bacteria. Their shape is the very first clue to figuring out who they are and what they're up to. And wow, what a variety! You might think bacteria are just simple little blobs, but look at this. We see perfect spheres clustered together like grapes, others that form these long, elegant chains. Some are rod-shaped, and others are beautiful spirals. This diversity isn't just for show, it's a core part of who they are. Okay, let's put some names to these faces. The round ones, we call those cocci. The little rod-shaped guys are known as bacilli, and those cool corkscrew-looking ones, spirochetes. And depending on how they hang out together after they divide, you can get pairs, chains, or even these neat angular patterns. All right, next up, we're exploring their Great Wall. Every single bacterium needs some kind of protection, right? A kind of body armor that gives it structure and protects it from the harsh outside world. And that armor is the cell wall. But here's the thing. Not all walls are created equal. In fact, this is one of the biggest, most fundamental divides in the entire bacterial kingdom. On the left, you've got your gram-positive bacteria with this really thick, dense wall. But on the right, the gram-negative bacteria have a much more complex, multi-layered defense system. So what's the real difference here? Well, it all comes down to a mesh-like molecule called peptidoglycan. Gram-positive bacteria have a massive layer of it. Gram-negatives, on the other hand, just have a thin little layer, but, and this is the key, it's sandwiched between two membranes. That outer membrane is a total game changer. It's like an extra force field that makes them really tough to deal with. And if you zoom in even further, down to the molecular level, it gets even more fascinating. The way this peptidoglycan mesh is actually built is different. In gram-positives, it's held together by these flexible little bridges. But in gram-negatives, the links are direct and much more rigid. It seems like a tiny detail, but it has huge consequences for the wall's strength and flexibility. Okay, we've seen the fortress wall. Now let's breach it and see what's going on inside. It's time to check out the anatomy of a true survivor and see what makes these tiny biological machines actually tick. This diagram is our master map for the inside of the cell. It might look pretty streamlined, but don't let that fool you. Every single part you see here has a critical job to do. So let's zoom in on a couple of the most important components, starting with the brains of the operation. This is the nucleoid. It's the command center, where all the genetic blueprints, the DNA, are kept. But here's what's really different from our cells. There's no membrane around it. The DNA, which is just one big circular chromosome, is just there, floating in this region, running the whole show. And this simple design is one reason they can replicate so incredibly fast. Okay, next up, the ribosomes. If the nucleoid has the blueprints, then these guys are the factories. Think of them as thousands of tiny 3D printers scattered all over the cell. They read the instructions from the DNA and build all the proteins the bacterium needs to live, grow, and fix itself. They're the real workhorses of the cell. But you know, for some bacteria, a cell wall just isn't enough. They add extra layers of protection. A nice, well-defined capsule can act like a shield against attack. A looser slime layer can keep them from drying out. And when they all team up, they can create a biofilm, a shared, slimy fortress that is incredibly difficult to penetrate. But what about the ultimate survival mode? For that, some bacteria can form an endospore. Seriously, think of this as a panic room for the cell's most precious cargo, its DNA. It's this dormant, super tough structure with multiple layers that can survive pretty much anything. Boiling, freezing, radiation, you name it. Then, when things get better, it can wake up and bring the bacterium right back to life. It's amazing. So, we know bacteria are experts at protecting themselves, but they're not just sitting ducks. How do they get around? Let's dive into the world of the masters of mobility and see the incredible tools bacteria use to cruise through their environment. So, meet the flagellum. This long, whip-like tail is basically a biological propeller. A bacterium might have just one, or a little tuft of them, or it could be completely covered in them. And just like their shape, the number and arrangement of these flagella are a huge clue for identifying what kind of bacteria you're looking at. And of course, scientists have names for all these different setups. If it has just a single flagellum, that's called monotrichous. A little tuft at one end, that's Lophotrichous. Flagella all over its body like a hairy little bean, that's Paratrichous. And if it's got flagella at both ends, we call it Amphitrichous. It's a really straightforward way to classify them by how they move. So how in the world does this propeller actually work? Well, it's powered by one of the most incredible pieces of machinery in all of nature, the basal body. This is a true molecular motor. It locks itself into the cell wall and membrane and uses the flow of ions, like electricity, to spin that flagellum at unbelievable speeds. It is an absolute marvel of nanoengineering. Now, beyond those big propellers, bacteria also have these other, shorter, hair-like bits. Fimbriae are like little bristles that help the cells stick to surfaces, super important for causing infections. Then you have pili, and some of these, like the famous sex pilus, can act like a bridge to another bacterium, allowing them to pass pieces of DNA back and forth. It's a huge reason they can evolve so quickly. All right, for our last stop on this tour, we're going to zoom way out. Instead of looking at just one bacterium, let's look at the whole community. It's time to explore the circle of life for bacteria and see how their populations boom and bust over time. So if you take some bacteria and give them the perfect home, plenty of food, right temperature, everything they want, their population doesn't just grow in a straight line. Its life unfolds in a very predictable story, kind of like a 4-act play, and this growth curve tells that whole story. So let's break down those 4 acts. Act 1 is the lag phase. The bacteria are just getting used to their new home, gearing up, and getting ready to grow. Then comes Act 2, the log phase. This is explosive, exponential growth. They're just dividing like crazy. But eventually, resources get scarce, and they hit Act 3, the stationary phase, where the number of new cells equals the number of dying cells. And finally, Act 4, the decline phase, where death starts to win out. But here's a really interesting little detail you might miss if you don't look closely at the graph. The total number of cells, that's living and dead ones counted together, stays pretty high, even while the number of living, viable cells is totally crashing. It just goes to show that even when the party's over, the remnants of that massive population are still hanging around. So when you think about it, from their custom body armor to their high-speed motors and their incredible survival pods, bacteria are nothing short of microscopic marvels of engineering. They are master survivors, perfected over billions of years. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible secrets are these tiny engineers still hiding from us?